How does a man born in chains rise to defy empires and change the course of history? Toussaint Louverture's journey began in 1743 on the Betrayal plantation in Saint-Domingue, modern-day Haiti, a brutal colony built on the suffering of enslaved people. For most, life under such conditions offered no escape, but even as a child, Toussaint displayed an unyielding curiosity and a spirit that refused to be confined. Unlike many of his peers, Toussaint had access to an extraordinary gift: education. Oral histories suggest his godfather, Pierre Baptiste, a free black man, taught him to read and write. This education introduced Toussaint to the revolutionary ideas of the Enlightenment. Through the words of Rousseau and Voltaire, he found a truth that changed everything. Freedom wasn't just a dream, it was a right. These ideas didn't just inspire him, they lit a fire within him. On the plantation, Toussaint became known for his resilience and intellect. A skilled horseman and an expert in agriculture, he was trusted not only by his fellow enslaved workers, but even by white overseers. Yet Toussaint's loyalty was never to the system that oppressed him. Quietly, he helped others while building his own reputation as a man who could achieve what seemed impossible. By the 1770s, Toussaint achieved something almost unheard of: his freedom. Now a free man, he became a landowner, earning respect across racial lines. But Toussaint didn't retreat into comfort. Instead, he used his position to aid others still trapped in bondage. He was no longer just a man, he was a symbol of what freedom could accomplish. Then in 1791, the spark of rebellion ignited. The enslaved population of Saint-Domingue, driven by centuries of oppression, rose up. Toussaint could have stayed on the sidelines, enjoying his hard-won freedom, but at nearly 50 years old, he made a fateful decision: to join the fight. Yet he didn't merely join, he led. In the chaos of rebellion, Toussaint's discipline, intellect, and courage set him apart. A man who had once worked the land now prepared to reclaim it, not just for himself, but for an entire people. In August 1791, under the cover of darkness, a secret gathering of enslaved people took place at Bois Caïman. It wasn't just a meeting, it was a spark. Led by Dutty Boukman, a Vodou priest, the ceremony was a declaration of war and a spiritual awakening. It marked the beginning of the Haitian Revolution, a rebellion that would shatter one of the most brutal systems of slavery in history. Amid this uprising, Toussaint Louverture emerged, not as a fiery orator, but as a quiet strategist. At first he remained in the background, aiding in planning rather than commanding directly. But it wasn't long before his extraordinary abilities made him indispensable. Toussaint's genius wasn't in brute force. It was in outthinking his enemies. European generals dismissed him as just another rebel, only to find themselves outmaneuvered by his every move. Toussaint's tactics were as revolutionary as his ideals. Guerrilla warfare, scorched earth strategies, and psychological warfare became his trademarks. Entire plantations were burned, denying the French, British, and Spanish forces the resources they needed. What was once a tool of oppression became a weapon of resistance. His strategies weren't just about survival, they were about victory at any cost. But Toussaint wasn't just a warrior, he was a diplomat. Early in the revolution, he allied with the Spanish, who supported the enslaved population against the French colonialists. Yet when France abolished slavery in 1794, Toussaint made a bold and controversial decision. He switched sides. For Toussaint, this was more than strategy. It was a moral stand. Aligning with a government committed to abolishing slavery gave legitimacy to the revolution and its goals. Still, the revolution was fraught with challenges. Rival leaders questioned Toussaint's decisions, and former allies turned into adversaries. Through it all, Toussaint's vision never wavered: a free Saint-Domingue where no one lived in chains. By the late 1790s, Toussaint had not only defeated powerful colonial forces, but also brought a fragile stability to a land torn apart by war. The Haitian Revolution was far from over, but Toussaint Louverture had already proven himself more than a leader. He was a symbol of hope and defiance, yet as the revolution reached its peak, the greatest challenges of his life were still to come. Toussaint Louverture was more than a revolutionary leader. He was a visionary statesman, determined to build a society where freedom wasn't just an idea, but a lasting reality. By the late 1790s, Saint-Domingue had been transformed from a colony in revolt to a land grappling with an even greater challenge: governance. Toussaint understood that emancipation was only the beginning. True freedom required unity, stability, and a new vision for the future. Saint-Domingue was a fractured society. Former slaves longed for liberty but faced economic uncertainty. Free people of color sought recognition and protection. White settlers, clinging to their dwindling power, resisted change. Toussaint tackled this challenge with bold and unconventional methods. He drew on both Catholicism and Vodou, weaving these spiritual traditions into a shared cultural identity. In a world divided by race and class, Toussaint worked to forge unity not just through politics, but through faith and shared purpose. In 1801, Toussaint took an unprecedented step to solidify his vision. He drafted the Constitution of Saint-Domingue, a revolutionary document that abolished slavery forever and declared equality for all citizens, regardless of race. Yet it went further, naming Toussaint Governor-General for life and granting him the power to appoint his successor. To some, this was a move toward dictatorship. To Toussaint, it was a necessary safeguard to protect the fragile gains of the revolution. Stability, he believed, required strong leadership. Toussaint's ambitions extended far beyond the borders of Saint-Domingue. He reached out to global leaders, including US President John Adams, seeking trade partnerships and international alliances. His letters revealed a man of extraordinary intellect, one who understood that Saint-Domingue's survival depended on its place in the wider world. Toussaint wasn't just leading a rebellion, he was laying the foundations for a new nation to stand as an equal among the world's powers. Yet not all of his decisions were celebrated. To rebuild the colony's economy, Toussaint reinstated plantation labor, now with wages. For many former slaves, this was a bitter compromise. They had dreamed of complete freedom from the system that had once enslaved them. Toussaint believed it was a necessary step to ensure the colony's survival, but it created tensions that tested his leadership and his legacy. By the early 1800s, Toussaint Louverture had achieved the unthinkable. He had defeated some of the world's most powerful colonial forces, unified a divided society, and transformed Saint-Domingue into a beacon of liberty. But his growing power and influence had made him a threat. Across the Atlantic, Napoleon Bonaparte watched with growing unease and began to plot his next move. Toussaint Louverture's unwavering belief in freedom and equality had made him a hero, but it also made him a target. By 1802, Napoleon Bonaparte, determined to restore French control over Saint-Domingue, sent an expeditionary force led by General Charles Leclerc. Their mission was clear: crush the revolution and eliminate Toussaint. Toussaint, ever the strategist, sought to avoid bloodshed. He entered negotiations with Leclerc, believing that reason and dialogue might spare his people more suffering. But Napoleon had no intention of compromise. Using deceit as a weapon, Leclerc lured Toussaint into a false sense of security, offering peace talks that masked a darker plan. Toussaint, trusting his reputation as an honorable leader, walked into the trap. Arrested and deported to France, Toussaint was imprisoned in the fortress of Fort de Joux, high in the Jura Mountains. The conditions were inhumane. His cell was damp and freezing, his food was scarce, and medical care was non-existent. Yet even in captivity, Toussaint's spirit remained unbroken. Before his arrest, he had warned Napoleon, "In overthrowing me, you have cut down in Saint-Domingue only the trunk of the tree of liberty. It will spring up again by the roots, for they are many, and they are deep." On April 7th, 1803, Toussaint Louverture died in his cell, likely of pneumonia, though some speculate his death was the result of deliberate neglect. Napoleon may have hoped to erase him, but in doing so, he immortalized him. Toussaint's death became a rallying cry for freedom. Just months later, his vision was realized. Jean-Jacques Dessalines, Toussaint's former ally, led the revolution to its final victory. On January 1st, 1804, Haiti declared its independence, becoming the first black republic in the modern world and the first nation to abolish slavery entirely. Toussaint's legacy could not be confined by walls or chains. His life and death became symbols of resistance, a reminder that even the most powerful empires could not extinguish the flame of liberty. He had walked into history not as a defeated man, but as a figure whose ideas would inspire revolutions for generations to come. Toussaint Louverture's story did not end with his death. It transformed into legend. Less than a year after his passing, Haiti declared its independence on January 1st, 1804, becoming the first Black Republic and the first nation to abolish slavery. Toussaint may not have lived to see this moment, but his vision had guided it. His roots of liberty, as he predicted, had grown too deep to be cut. But the man who freed a nation also became the subject of myths, speculation, and conflicting narratives. In Haitian folklore, Toussaint's spirit is said to wander the mountains, protecting his homeland from harm. These tales depict him not only as a liberator, but as a mystical figure, a guardian whose work did not end with his life. To his people, he remains a symbol of hope and defiance. Yet myths can distort as much as they inspire. French propaganda portrayed Toussaint as a ruthless tyrant, spreading tales of indiscriminate violence and betrayal. These accounts painted him as a man willing to sacrifice anyone for power, but the truth lies somewhere in between. Historical evidence reveals a leader forced to make impossible choices in the face of unrelenting oppression. His flaws and compromises make him human, but his achievements make him unforgettable. Toussaint's influence extends far beyond Haiti. His life inspired abolitionists like Frederick Douglass and revolutionaries like Nelson Mandela. To them, Toussaint was more than a historical figure. He was a blueprint for challenging systems of oppression. His unwavering belief in justice and equality resonated across continents, proving that the fight for freedom is universal. But Toussaint's legacy is also a cautionary tale. His reinstatement of plantation labor, though well-intentioned, tested the loyalty of those he liberated. His centralization of power drew criticism even from allies. These contradictions remind us that great leaders are rarely perfect, but their imperfections often reflect the complexity of the times they lived in. Ultimately, Toussaint Louverture's story endures because it speaks to something timeless. It is a testament to resilience, vision, and the unyielding pursuit of liberty. He was not just a man of his era, he was a man who defined an era. His life reminds us that freedom is never given, it is fought for, protected, and earned. Toussaint Louverture once said, "In overthrowing me, you have cut down only the trunk of the tree of liberty." His words were not a lament, they were a prophecy fulfilled. The roots of that tree have spread across the world, inspiring generations of revolutionaries, dreamers, and visionaries. Toussaint's life was a symphony of contradictions. He was a liberator who reinstated labor, a revolutionary who centralized power, a man of ideals navigating the harsh realities of war. Yet it is these complexities that make him so compelling. He was not flawless, he was transformative. Haiti's independence was Toussaint's greatest legacy, but his impact does not stop there. His story is a reminder that even in the face of betrayal and oppression, one person's determination can alter the course of history. Toussaint walked into history with unshakable resolve, leaving behind a legacy that continues to whisper to all who dream of a better, freer world.